Yieldmax ETFs seem to be getting more and more popular as the year goes on, especially since we've been in a pretty aggressive bull market for the past couple of months now. And being in a bull market allows these Yieldmax ETFs to pay out significant distributions on a monthly or weekly basis because of the higher premiums from the options, as well as the significant growth from the underlying stocks. So you have ETFs like MSTY currently paying a 77.3% distribution rate with those dividends paid out monthly. And then you have NVDY, the NVIDIA Yieldmax ETF, paying a 78% distribution yield. And then of course we have this huge list of other covered call Yieldmax ETFs, with the underlyings typically being higher growth, higher volatility stocks. So you could definitely go the route of sort of picking and choosing which Yieldmax ETFs you believe in the most, or you could just stick with YMAX, which is basically the fund of all Yieldmax ETFs. In fact, its name is quite literally the Yieldmax Universe Fund of Option Income ETFs. So it's basically an ETF that holds a diversified basket of other Yieldmax ETFs. And as we know, those individual Yieldmax ETFs utilize a covered call strategy on individual stocks that typically carry significant volatility. And as of right now, YMAX is actually paying a higher distribution rate than a lot of those individual Yieldmax ETFs at 69%. And even better, those distributions are paid every single week, averaging anywhere between 10 to 19 cents per share. And because Yieldmax funds have become so popular, YMAX has just been growing like crazy in terms of net assets. Its AUM is just under 1 billion, being up nearly 400 million since early April of this year. So needless to say, a lot of investors are jumping on that YMAX train. Now, what I think is interesting about its portfolio is that among the 32 different holdings, they all have an equal weighting of around 3 to 3.5%. And what I like about this is the diversification and equal weight tends to reduce the impact of any single ETF's performance on YMAX's income stream. In other words, it makes it so no single ETF dominates the distribution pool. And it also mitigates NAV decay a little bit as well by diversifying away any large drops that some of the individual ETFs might experience. So that's what I really like about YMAX, is that it has that diversified portfolio of all those different Yieldmax ETFs that make it ever so slightly less risky than putting all your money into TSLY, for example. Another thing I really like about YMAX is even though its capital growth during market rallies typically gets capped because of the covered call strategies, the distributions have been so high that its total return has outperformed both SPY and QQQ year to date. It's up just under 14% year to date and may as well could continue to outperform the indexes going forward as the market potentially stays consistently positive. So on a total return basis, it's definitely been very profitable so far this year. Now, when it comes to expenses, it does have a slightly higher expense ratio compared to other Yieldmax ETFs. It's currently at 1.28%, whereas most other Yieldmax ETFs expense ratios are around just 1%. So you are paying a little more in fees to hold YMAX, mainly because of how actively managed the fund is. They rebalance the portfolio fairly regularly. But I recently learned that some of you wouldn't mind paying as high as a 10% expense ratio for Yieldmax ETFs. I definitely wouldn't want to pay 10% in fees every year, but to each their own. Now, as always, with a fund like YMAX and really any Yieldmax ETF, you do really need to keep an eye on the NAV and truly determine if those distributions can consistently provide a positive return over the years. From January to April of this year, the NAV for YMAX fell 36% in the matter of a couple of months, and obviously those significant distributions have been able to offset those pretty big drawdowns and provide a cushion that way, but it's still something to at least keep an eye on going forward. So with all this being said, let me know what you guys think of YMAX and whether or not you think it's a great buy and hold ETF, especially with those huge weekly distributions, and I will see you all next time.